Hello everyone, and welcome. This is a documentary-style analysis channel where we explore fascinating facts, hidden lore, and powerful figures from the Lord of the Rings and the wider universe created by J.R.R. Tolkien. In today's video, we'll take a deep dive into the most powerful beings in Tolkien's legendarium, carefully analyzing characters such as Eru Ilúvatar, Melkor, Sauron, Gandalf, Galadriel, dragons, and many others, ranking their power and understanding what truly makes them so formidable. If you enjoy in-depth Tolkien analysis like this, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. We're still a small channel with few subscribers, and your support makes a huge difference. Now, let's begin our journey through the most powerful characters in Tolkien's universe. At the very top of Tolkien's hierarchy of power stands Eru Ilúvatar. He is not merely another character within the story, but the supreme being, the creator of all existence. Eru Ilúvatar is the one who conceived the Ainur, the great spirits who shaped reality through the music of the Ainur, giving form to Arda itself. In Tolkien's legendarium, Eru functions as an omnipotent, omniscient presence, far beyond the reach of any other being, whether Valar, Maiar, elves, or men. Even if we were to remove Eru Ilúvatar from the discussion, the universe of Tolkien would still remain deeply metaphysical. The Ainur exist beyond conventional limitations such as space and time, capable of shaping reality at a fundamental level. Yet Eru stands above even them. He alone possesses the secret fire, the flame imperishable, which grants true life and independent existence. This is something no other being can create or fully control, no matter how powerful they may appear. What makes Eru Ilúvatar especially unique is that his power is absolute, but rarely direct. He does not intervene constantly in the affairs of Arda. Instead, his will unfolds subtly through fate, chance, and consequence. Even acts of rebellion, such as those carried out by Melkor, ultimately serve a greater design that Eru foresaw from the very beginning. Nothing exists outside his knowledge or authority. In this sense, Eru Ilúvatar is not defined by battles, weapons, or displays of force. His power is conceptual and existential. He represents authorship within the world itself, the source of meaning, order, and purpose. Every conflict, every tragedy, and every act of heroism in Middle-earth traces back, in some way, to his original design. As we move forward into beings who act more directly within the world, it's important to remember this foundation. All power in Tolkien's universe is relative, except for Eru Ilúvatar's. Everything else exists beneath him, no matter how vast, terrifying, or divine it may seem. Following Eru Ilúvatar, the discussion moves into beings who act directly within Arda, and among them stands Galadriel. Much controversy surrounds her modern portrayals, but when we return to Tolkien's original writings, Galadriel is not defined primarily as a warrior. In the ages depicted by later adaptations, she was already married and a mother, far removed from the image of a frontline soldier. Instead, her true strength lay elsewhere, in a far more subtle and profound form of power. Known as Altariel, the Lady Galadriel possessed a beauty described as supernatural, eclipsing even the golden and silver radiance of Surin Amrith in the heart of Lothlorien. Tolkien himself described her as the most powerful and most beautiful of all the elves who remained in Middle-earth during the Third Age. Her presence alone commanded respect, and often fear, without the need for weapons or open displays of force. Galadriel's power can be understood in three distinct categories: innate powers, acquired powers, and talismanic powers. Her innate abilities came from her elven nature, born of a Noldoran father and a Teleran mother, blending the silver light of Telperion with the golden light of Lorelin. She was also uniquely descended from the Vanyar through her grandmother Indis, making her lineage exceptionally rare among the elves of the Third Age. Physically, Galadriel was unusually strong, not merely in spirit or intellect. Tolkien wrote that she grew beyond the measure of most women of the Noldor, strong in body, mind, and will. She was a match for scholars and athletes alike in her youth, though she was never described as a warrior in the traditional sense. Her strength expressed itself through resilience, authority, and inner power rather than combat. One of Galadriel's most formidable abilities was her perception of evil. Over time, she developed an unmatched capacity to discern malice hidden behind fair words and pleasant appearances. Her gaze alone could unnerve even the strongest characters. Galadriel did not need a sword to command power. Her presence, wisdom, and will were more than enough to shape the fate of those around her. Legolas follows as another powerful figure, though his strength expresses itself very differently. As an elf, Legolas possesses exceptional senses far beyond those of men. His vision and hearing are extraordinarily sharp, allowing him to perceive movement, sound, and danger at great distances. This heightened awareness makes him an invaluable presence in any environment, whether forest, mountain, or battlefield. Legolas is fluid and agile, capable of moving with remarkable speed and silence. He requires little sustenance and can endure long journeys without fatigue. Like other elves, he is resistant to extremes of cold and heat and enjoys near immunity to disease. These traits alone already place him well above most mortal beings in terms of endurance and survival. Where Legolas truly excels is in his mastery of the bow. His skill with archery is described as nearly flawless, allowing him to strike targets with incredible accuracy even under extreme conditions. His movements are precise and economical, reflecting centuries of refinement and discipline. This is not merely physical talent, but a deep harmony between body, mind, and environment. Beyond combat, Legolas possesses an innate connection to the natural world. He has a profound affinity with trees, forests, and stone, allowing him to sense the state of his surroundings in ways others cannot. He can hear the stones of Eregion and the ancient trees of Fangorn Forest, perceiving echoes of memory and presence within them. This ability reflects the long, symbiotic relationship elves maintain with nature, developed over countless generations. Legolas can also achieve complete stillness, blending seamlessly into his environment. This allows him to observe without being seen and to interact with the world around him on a subtle level. These traits are not unique to him alone, but he represents an exceptional example of what elves can become after centuries of coexistence with their lands. While Legolas may not command reality or wield vast magical forces, his precision, awareness, and unity with nature make him one of the most effective and formidable individuals in Middle-earth. His power lies in mastery rather than domination, a different but no less significant form of strength. Gandalf stands on an entirely different level from mortals and even from most elves. He is a Maya, a being created by the thought of Eru Ilúvatar at the very beginning of known time. His physical and spiritual essence is of the same nature as the Valar, though of a lesser degree. The form he wears in Middle-earth is merely a veil, a limitation placed upon him, concealing a far greater power beneath. Among the Maiar, Gandalf was known as Loren, later called Aloran, and he was regarded as the wisest of his order. His strength did not lie in brute force, but in wisdom, foresight, and restraint. Gandalf understood that true power was best used subtly, guiding events rather than dominating them. This allowed him to exploit the weaknesses of his enemies far more effectively than sheer strength ever could. One of Gandalf's most remarkable abilities was his foresight. He anticipated many of the most significant events of the War of the Ring, including the crucial role hobbits would play, the future identity of Aragorn as a lesser, and even the rediscovery of the White Tree of Gondor. These insights were not simple guesses, but reflections of his deep perception of both the physical and spiritual realms. Gandalf also wielded powerful enchantments and possessed exceptional resilience. His endurance allowed him to face enemies far greater in raw physical power. Through the secret fire, the flame imperishable spoken of by Eru Ilúvatar, Gandalf was connected to the very essence of life and reality itself. This connection elevated him beyond ordinary limitations. His confrontation with the Balrog demonstrated this clearly. Gandalf perceived the world simultaneously in its physical and spiritual aspects, allowing him to see through illusions and darkness that would blind mortal eyes. He was capable of recognizing truth beneath deception and light beneath shadow. Even so, Gandalf remained bound by his purpose. He was not sent to rule or overpower, but to inspire resistance, courage, and hope. His true strength lay not only in what he could destroy, but in what he could preserve. In Middle-earth, Gandalf represented wisdom guiding power, a force subtle yet immeasurably profound. Dragons stand among the most physically powerful creatures in Tolkien's universe, and their presence has always inspired fear and awe. These beings were created by Morgoth as weapons of destruction, and each generation of dragons grew more dangerous than the last. While Smaug is the most widely known due to his role in later events, he was far from the only dragon to terrorize Arda. Glaurung was the first of the great dragons. He did not possess wings, yet his strength was immense. Glaurung relied not only on raw physical power but also on cunning and malice, capable of spreading despair and corruption wherever he went. His presence alone could shatter morale, making him a formidable force even without flight. Calagon marked a terrifying evolution. He was the first winged dragon, belonging to the line of cold dragons, and his sheer size and power surpassed all others. Calagon was Morgoth's most powerful servant in terms of physical might. During the War of Wrath, he resisted the great eagles themselves, including Thorondor, the king of the eagles. He even withstood combat against the sacred Vala ship, a feat unmatched by any other dragon. The battle against Calagon lasted an entire day, demonstrating the scale of his endurance and destructive capability. When he finally fell, his body shattered the towers of Thangorodrim, showing just how immense he truly was. Despite this, even Calagon was not the most powerful being in Tolkien's universe, only the greatest among dragons. Smaug, an igneous dragon, represented the peak of cunning combined with physical strength. Unlike Calagon, Smaug relied heavily on intelligence, manipulation, and psychological domination. His near-impenetrable scales made him extraordinarily difficult to defeat, and his presence alone was enough to subjugate entire regions. Overall, dragons were the strongest physical race in Middle-earth. Their power was raw, destructive, and overwhelming. Yet despite their might, they ultimately remained tools of greater powers. Even the greatest of them could fall, reminding us that physical strength alone, no matter how vast, was never enough to dominate the fate of Arda. Sauron emerges next as one of the most well-known and terrifying figures in Tolkien's universe. He is not merely a powerful individual, but the embodiment and instrument of evil within Arda. From the very beginning, Sauron participated in the deeds of Melkor Morgoth, taking part in the corruption of the world itself. This included the creation of dragons, monstrous creatures, and many of the horrors that plagued Middle-earth under Morgoth's dominion. During the Second Age, Sauron rose to unprecedented power. He became capable of forging rings of power and, through deception and manipulation, ensnared elves and men alike. With his armies, he conquered vast portions of Middle-earth. Yet even at his height, he was not powerful enough to stand against Numenor in open conflict. Instead, he relied on cunning, ultimately orchestrating Numenor's downfall from within. After its destruction, Sauron lost the ability to take a fair form, but his power remained immense. In the aftermath, Sauron proved strong enough to wage prolonged war against the surviving men and elves. However, he was still not powerful enough to prevent his eventual defeat at the end of the Second Age. When the Third Age began, Sauron was significantly diminished. Even so, he retained the ability to incite enemies against Gondor, unleash plagues, and rebuild his influence slowly and methodically. By the later Third Age, Sauron had become the single most powerful being in Middle-earth. Neither Gandalf the White nor any other individual believed they could prevail against him in direct confrontation. As a former Maia of all, Sauron possessed deep knowledge of the physical world, allowing him to craft engines of war and, most importantly, the One Ring. His power was not limited to armies and artifacts, it seeped into the land itself, corrupting everything it touched. Animals grew savage, the earth darkened, and entire regions were twisted by his presence. Even weakened, Sauron's personal power remained overwhelming. Had he recovered the One Ring, his victory would have been swift and absolute, leaving no force in Middle-earth capable of resisting him. Ungoliant follows as one of the most mysterious and unsettling entities in Tolkien's universe. Known in some traditions as Goliath in Sindarin references, she was a primordial being who took the form of a colossal spider. Ungoliant existed outside the normal hierarchies of power, and her origins remain deliberately obscured, adding to her terror. She was initially allied with Melkor during the Years of the Trees and, for a brief time, acted in concert with him in Aman and later in Middle-earth. Ungoliant was the distant mother of Shelob, the great spider of Cirith Ungol, and the first of the giant spiders that would later infest Arda. Unlike dragons or Balrogs, Ungoliant's power was not rooted in physical dominance alone, but in an all-consuming hunger. She devoured light itself, feeding on radiance, life, and even the essence of divine creation. Her darkness was so absolute that it seemed to erase existence rather than merely obscure it. The true nature of Ungoliant remains unknown. Some believe she may have been one of the Maiar corrupted by Melkor long ago, though she is not counted among the known Ainur. Others claim she came from the darkness beyond the confines of Arda, from the void itself, making her something closer to an embodiment of nothingness than a created being. What is known is that even Melkor feared her. After aiding Melkor in the destruction of the two trees of Valinor, Ungoliant turned against him, demanding more than he could give. She grew so vast and powerful from consuming the light of the trees that Melkor himself was nearly destroyed by her. Only the intervention of the Balrogs saved him from being consumed entirely. Eventually, Ungoliant withdrew from Melkor and dwelled independently in Avathar, devouring herself in endless hunger. Her power was not defined by ambition or dominion, but by annihilation. Ungoliant represents a form of threat unlike any other in Tolkien's world. Not conquest, but the erasure of all things. Melkor comes next, the being who would later become known as Morgoth, and he stands as the greatest power in all of Arda after Eru Ilúvatar himself. Among the Ainur, Melkor was originally the most powerful, gifted with immense knowledge, strength, and creative potential. However, he turned away from harmony and fell into darkness, becoming the ultimate antagonist of the world. Through his rebellion, the very fabric of Arda was scarred, and much of the suffering that followed can be traced back to his actions. There were multiple stages of Melkor's power, each reflecting a different manifestation of his nature. As Morgoth the Tyrant, he took on a colossal physical form, monstrous in size and strength, towering like a giant of legend. In this state, he could be wounded and even slain, yet Tolkien notes that even then, Melkor possessed the capacity to reduce all of Arda into formless chaos if the Valar and Eru had not opposed him. In earlier stages, such as Melkor of Utumno and Melkor of Valinor, he was less physically bound and far more dangerous. In these forms, he could not be killed even by the Valar themselves. He retained the ability to change shape, move unseen, and wield elemental forces of fire and ice, from the highest mountain peaks to the deepest furnaces beneath the earth. At his most titanic, he battled multiple Valar at once, holding advantage for long periods, vast as a mountain and terrifying beyond measure. At an even higher level, Melkor existed as a near demiurgic force within Ea itself. In this state, his power was immeasurable, vast enough to corrupt all matter and living things throughout the universe. Before the world was fully formed, he twisted the very substance of reality, ensuring that evil would be woven into creation itself. Above all others, however, stands Eru Ilúvatar. He is infinite, immeasurable, and beyond all comparison. More than a metaphysical being, Eru transcends creation itself. He is the source of all that was, is, will be, and even all that never came to be. No power, no darkness, and no rebellion can exist outside his design. Above all beings discussed, beyond Melkor, Morgoth, Sauron, dragons, Maiar, and elves, stands Eru Ilúvatar. By definition, Eru Ilúvatar is the supreme deity, the ultimate power, ruler, and source of everything that exists within Tolkien's legendarium. He is not simply the greatest among powerful beings, he exists on an entirely different level of reality. Eru is infinite, immeasurable, and unrestricted by time, space, or form. Unlike the Valar and the Maiar, who entered Ea and were therefore bound by the world they helped shape, Eru Ilúvatar remains beyond it. He is capable of acts that even his most powerful creations could never imagine. Creation itself originates from his thought, and existence unfolds according to themes that ultimately trace back to his will. Even rebellion, discord, and evil are not outside his design. They are woven into a greater harmony that only Eru fully comprehends. What makes Eru Ilúvatar truly unmatched is not only raw power, but absolute authority over reality. He is more than a metaphysical being, he exists on a level that could be described as pataphysical, transcending even the narrative structure of the world. In this sense, Eru is not only the creator within the story, but the ultimate source of meaning behind it. Nothing that happens in Arda, whether triumph or tragedy, lies beyond his knowledge or allowance. Melkor's corruption of the world, the rise and fall of Morgoth, the long shadow of Sauron, and the suffering of countless ages all unfold within boundaries Eru established before the world was even formed. While other beings act through domination, fear, strength, or manipulation, Eru's influence manifests through inevitability, purpose, and final balance. In the end, Tolkien's universe is not defined by which character strikes the hardest blow, but by which power stands at the origin of all things. Eru Ilúvatar is the beginning, the end, and everything in between. He is the true greatest power of Tolkien's world, the one before whom all others, no matter how vast or terrifying, ultimately stand as creations within his design.